struggling to make a plant-based dinner that your whole family will eat, you're in luck. Today I am making a broccoli tofu stir fry that your whole family will love. I'm going to serve it over a brown rice. I'm going to show you a trick to make that brown rice super fluffy, and I'm going to show you how to do two things at once so you can get your dinner done quickly. The first thing you do is start the rice because it takes the longest to cook. We're going to add 2 cups of brown rice to our pan. And the trick here is to toast this rice. We're going to pop it kind of like popcorn. Now it's not going to explode and get all big and fluffy, but you'll be able to see how it's kind of popping like popcorn, and that's going to turn your rice into a super fluffy rice. While we're toasting the brown rice, I'm going to turn the oven on to 400 degrees, and we're going to start getting our tofu ready. So to prepare the tofu, we're just going to drain out the water. This is extra firm tofu that I'm using for this project. We're going to drain out the excess water, and it's extra firm tofu, so there's really no need to press it. There we go. Drain all the water off. I'm going to grab my tofu towel. So I'm just going to press this a little bit to get the water off the surface, and then we're going to break this into chunks. These can be bite-sized chunks. I like to do the chunks for this recipe because it gets all the flavor to each of those nooks and crannies. It also looks a little bit more like a chicken than the little squares of tofu. But I have done this with squares of tofu, so whatever you like, it's fine. Okay, our rice is starting to pop. Can you hear it? Those kernels are starting to... Do you see how those kernels are starting to turn brown and toasted? You want to keep that popping for a few minutes so that all of the kernels get popped, or as many as possible. So while that's popping, I'm going to finish this tofu real quick. And I'm going to go back over there and get the rice going. Now brown rice takes about 45 minutes to cook once it's been popped like this. So we will have time to get the whole dinner together and even get the kitchen cleaned up before dinner's ready, which is kind of handy. So after supper you can be just done. We're going to go ahead and add some water. You can add some vegetable broth there or some no chicken broth if you'd like. I'm just going to add a little salt. And put the lid on that. I'll turn the heat down to low and let that cook for about 45 minutes. So our rice is cooking. We are going to get the tofu cooking in the oven, and then we're going to make the sauce, and it'll all come together in a jiffy. So let's go ahead and make our tofu crispy. To do that, we are going to add just a little bit of Bragg's liquid aminos for seasoning. That'll give it a little salty flavor. And we're also going to add a couple tablespoons of oil. And stir that together so that everything is coated. And you can make these chunks as big or as little as you like. There you go. So some of these chunks are bigger than I want them to be, so I'm just going to chop them up a little bit while I do this. And then really the secret ingredient to making crispy tofu is cornstarch. So we're going to add that to this to coat it. It'll make a nice breading, and it'll get nice and crispy in the oven. Make sure every piece gets coated with the cornstarch. That looks great. Now let's get our pan ready. I like to line my pan with parchment paper because less dishes is always a better option. And all we need to do now is to put our tofu onto the pan. So you want to spread the tofu out in a single layer. That'll give a chance for everything to get all nice and crispy around the edges. So that looks good. I'm going to pop this into the oven. I'm going to put the tofu in the oven for about 25 minutes, and I'm going to flip it over and cook it for another 20 minutes. This sauce comes together super quickly, so I just need to get it started in the last 20 minutes of cooking. I'm going to make a quick Asian slaw to add some vegetables to our dinner. We are going to do a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of light oil. We just need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're going to add a teaspoon of this toasted sesame oil. This adds a delicious flavor. Okay, that was probably a little bit more than a teaspoon. And we're going to add a tablespoon of honey. I'm using honey today. You can use agave nectar if you're vegan. And we're going to give us a little squirt of the Bragg's liquid aminos. If you don't have Bragg's liquid aminos, you can use low sodium soy sauce or tamari, whatever works for you. I just love the flavor of Bragg's better than the other ones. So let's give that a quick stir. And that'll make a nice dressing for our slaw. And the slaw, again, is super easy. It's one of those 5-minute recipes that adds vegetables to your meal without a lot of work. So I'm using a bag of the classic coleslaw mix. I'm going to dump that in. Oops, there we go. And I'm also going to use some kale. I have some kale in the fridge, and this is ribbon sliced, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to my bowl. And we're going to stir that all together. I maybe should have used a bigger bowl, but other than that, ooh, I've got an idea. Hang on. Put the lid on and we'll give it a shake. All right, there you go. Now your dressing is all mixed into your slaw, and our slaw is all done. If you really want to fancy this up, you can do some toasted sesame seeds, some almonds, some ramen noodles. I'm going to add some of these later after, right before we eat. The tofu is about done, so we just need to make our sauce real quick and cook our broccoli. So all we need to do is take our 1.5 cups of vegetable broth, or this is no chicken broth. I used 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 teaspoons of the Better Than Bouillon No Chicken seasoning. I mix that together, and into that I am going to add a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I am going to add some sugar for sweetness. I am going to add some of the Bragg's liquid aminos. Again, you could use light soy sauce here, low sodium. And I'm going to add a little bit of cayenne pepper. And to this I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. This will help it thicken up real quickly when we add it to the pan. Okay, I should have added that cornstarch to a smaller amount of water. I wasn't thinking clearly when I did it. For future reference, you're going to want to add that cornstarch to the smaller amount of water before you add everything else, because it's harder to get the lumps out that way. But it'll be fine. It's hard to mess up a good recipe, that's what I say. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to start sauteing. We're adding some onions, some minced garlic, and this is ginger. Let me show you a little trick with ginger. If you like having fresh ginger on hand, but you always forget to buy it at the grocery store, or you buy a whole big knob of it and you don't use the whole thing, well, here's a trick to always having fresh ginger. Store it in the freezer. All you have to do when you bring a knob of ginger home from the grocery store is to peel it and put it in a zippy bag. When you pull it out of the freezer, you just grate it into your dish. Okay, these are cooking. The onions are about soft. I'm going to add my broccoli to the pan. And then add a smidge of water and put the lid on so it can quick steam. Let that steam for a couple minutes. Look, our tofu is all done and it's nice and crispy. We are going to add that to our sauce in just a moment. Okay, our broccoli looks beautiful. Let's put it in our sauce. We're just going to stir that until it thickens, and we're going to add it in our tofu. Because we're using cornstarch for this, we need to let it come to a boil for about 1 minute. Once it starts to boil, we'll add our tofu. Another great reason to use the parchment paper is easy transfer to the pan. Now we just want that dry, crispy tofu to soak up some of that sauce, and it's going to be the perfect dinner. Just look at that. Just look at that fluffy brown rice. It came out perfectly. And our broccoli stir fry is ready to go. All we need to do now is serve it up. This delicious tofu stir fry. Get lots of that broccoli in there. The sauce is sweet and tangy. Your whole family's gonna love it. And this cabbage slaw just adds a nice freshness to the dish and some good nutrition. One last thing I like to add to this dish is what I call cheater spring rolls. I didn't make them myself. I got them at Costco, but they do add something nice to this dish that your family's going to appreciate. I just put them in the oven for the last 20 minutes that the tofu's cooking, and they come out at the same time. This tofu stir fry is so good. I know your family's going to love it. If you need some more family-friendly recipes, then subscribe to my channel, click that notification bell, and they'll let you know every time I upload a video. If you're looking for some more of a comfort food kind of dinner, try this macaroni and cheese recipe. I think you're gonna love that one.